You're 7 when your family sends you to court. They do not use the word sent. They say chosen. Chosen sounds nicer. Chosen sounds like you won something. Your father kneels when the messenger arrives. Your mother cries after he leaves. This should be your first warning. You are from a minor noble house, important enough to be useful, unimportant enough to be sacrificed. The perfect balance. You're scrubbed clean, dressed well, and taught how to bow properly. You practice smiling without showing teeth. You practice speaking only when spoken to. You practice disappearing. At court, everything is larger than you imagined. The halls echo, the tapestries watch, and the servants move like shadows that never look you in the eye. You're brought to the prince, who's your age or close enough to make comparisons cruel. He wears silk. You wear borrowed confidence. You're told you'll learn together, eat together, study together, and grow together. No one says why you were chosen instead of someone else. No one says what happens when the prince fails. You sleep in a smaller bed nearby, close enough to hear him breathe at night, close enough to remember your place. You're 9 when lessons begin to harden into routine. Latin comes before breakfast, scripture before noon, and manners are enforced at every hour in between, whether anyone's watching or not. Tutors observe everything: the way you stand, the way you hesitate before answering, the way your eyes move when you think you might be wrong. Mistakes are noticed immediately, written down carefully, and corrected with the same seriousness as prayer. The prince struggles with his letters. You do not. This, you learn quickly, is a problem. When he frowns at a passage, the tutor sighs with patience. When you answer too quickly, the tutor's expression tightens, and his attention shifts in your direction instead. It is here that you begin to understand a simple but lasting truth: that intelligence is only valuable when it does not expose power. Punishment is common in the schoolroom. Boys are struck for laziness, for disobedience, for speaking out of turn, and sometimes simply for being noticed. The difference lies in who receives it. At times, the tutor looks towards the prince, but his gaze moves past him and settles on you, and everyone in the room understands why. The first time the prince forgets a prayer, the rod does not rise toward him. It comes down on you instead. Not hard enough to injure, but firmly enough to teach the lesson that matters. By the end of the year, you no longer wait for instruction. You already know when to hesitate, when to laugh, and when to prepare yourself. You're 11 when the lesson finally becomes impossible to misunderstand. The prince refuses to repeat a Latin passage, not out of defiance, but out of boredom. He shrugs, looks past the tutor, and waits. He knows nothing will happen to him, and he's right. The tutor does not raise his voice or argue the point. He simply turns and looks at you instead. You feel the change before anyone speaks. Servants still their hands. The other boys lower their eyes, and the prince finally notices what is happening, watching you now with confusion that slowly turns into curiosity. You're told to step forward. You want to ask why, to say that the mistake was not yours, but the words never leave your mouth. You learned long ago that explanations are dangerous. You extend your hands. The rod comes down, not brutally, but firmly enough to leave a lasting memory. It strikes more than once, enough to hurt, enough to make its purpose clear, and careful enough to leave no marks that would require questions later. The prince watches as it happens. Something like guilt crosses his face, brief and uncertain, before disappearing entirely as the lesson moves on. Later, he avoids your eyes, and that avoidance hurts more than the blows ever did. No one offers an apology or explanation. At dinner, the conversation continues as if nothing occurred. You eat quietly, hands aching, and carry away a new understanding of how the court teaches its princes and how it teaches you. That night, you do not cry or shout or rebel. You simply study harder, and you memorize faster. By 13, you already know why you're here. The court never confirms it. It doesn't need to. Everyone behaves as if the arrangement is obvious. When the prince is late, you tense. When he misbehaves, you calculate. When he grows restless, you prepare yourself. You begin correcting him gently, quietly, always careful not to sound superior. Sometimes he listens. Sometimes he smiles and ignores you. The tutors praise your discipline. Courtiers praise your loyalty. They call you devoted, faithful, and brave. Funny how bravery always belongs to someone being hurt for another person's comfort. Punishment becomes routine, not constant, but it is expected. You learn how to endure without reacting, how to keep your face neutral, how to bow afterward and thank the tutor for the lesson. That part is usually important. The prince grows used to it. He no longer flinches. Sometimes he looks relieved, sometimes amused. You start to wonder if this system is teaching him restraint or teaching him something much worse. At night, you lie awake, listening to court laughter echo down the halls. You imagine a future where this ends. You imagine a version of yourself that exists outside these walls. You imagine wrong. You're 15 when the prince begins to understand power, not in theory, but in practice. He knows now that nothing truly happens to him. Tutors threaten, courtiers scold, nothing follows. He watches as you take the consequences and learns a very clear lesson. Authority means distance from pain. He starts pushing boundaries, speaking out of turn, laughing during prayers, testing how far he can go before someone looks at you instead of him. You notice the pattern before anyone else does. You try to warn him quietly. He rolls his eyes, tells you to relax, and says it's not that serious. It becomes that serious. Punishments grow sharper and less measured. The tutors justify it by saying repetition builds character. Yours, apparently. You stop counting the strikes. You start counting the days between them, and sometimes there are none. The prince avoids looking at you afterward, not from guilt, but from inconvenience. Your pain interrupts his comfort. That seems unfair to him. You feel something dangerous begin to form. Resentment. You bury it quickly. Resentment is noticed and corrected. You learn to smile again. This one looks more practiced, less human. Power, you realize, does not change people. It reveals them. And what it reveals about him is something you're not allowed to speak aloud. You're 17 and the punishments stop being private. The court gathers more often now. Lessons are conducted with observers. The prince performs. He knows the eyes are on him and he enjoys it. When he falters, the tutors do not hesitate. You're summoned forward in full view of nobles who pretend not to watch. Pain becomes spectacle. Silence becomes performance. You are no longer a companion. You are a reminder. Some courtiers avert their gaze. Some do not. A few look satisfied. No one intervenes. Intervention would require admitting this is wrong, and that would be inconvenient. The prince watches carefully. Sometimes he looks uncomfortable. Sometimes bored. Once he sighs as if this is taking too long. Afterward, people praise your endurance. They say you're fortunate to serve such a purpose. They say history will remember loyalty like yours. History, you're learning, remembers princes, not the boys who absorb their lessons. That night, you look at your hands and wonder how much of yourself can be taken before there's nothing left that belongs to you. The answer, unfortunately, is more. You're 19, and your body has learned things your mind refuses to accept. You flinch before commands are spoken. You tense at footsteps behind you. You wake before dawn already exhausted. The punishments are less frequent now, but heavier. Not because the prince behaves better, because he's older, stronger, and louder. His mistakes carry more weight. So do your consequences. You think about leaving, about slipping out at night and not stopping until the court is only a rumor behind you. Then, reality arrives, as it always does. Your family receives favors because of you. Protection, land rights, invitations they would never earn on their own. Your obedience feeds them. Your suffering pays dividends. You're reminded of this gently. A steward mentions it in passing. A tutor thanks you for your continued loyalty. The message is clear. You stay, or others pay. You learn how captivity works without locks. You remain because you're useful, because you're responsible, because you've been trained to believe endurance is virtue. You stop imagining escape. That imagination was dangerous anyway. You're 21 when the boy arrives. He's younger, smaller, and clean. He looks at the court with the same confusion you once had, the same hope. You recognize it immediately. That hurts more than anything else has. No one announces your replacement. There's no ceremony, no thanks. The tutors simply stop calling your name. When the prince missteps, they look elsewhere. You're dismissed from lessons quietly, like a tool no longer needed. The prince barely acknowledges the change. He nods once you pass in the hall and you bow because habits die hard. You're reassigned, minor duties, waiting, watching the boy learn what you learned years ago. You want to warn him. You don't. Warnings are pointless without power. Your purpose evaporates overnight. You realize how thin it always was. You're 23 when you leave the court. Leave is a generous word. You're released, like a servant whose usefulness expired quietly enough not to cause paperwork. No escort, no gift, no letter of praise. Just permission to go and the vague suggestion that your loyalty will be remembered. It'll not. Outside the court walls, the world feels unstructured. People speak when they want. They walk where they choose. No one tells you when to bow. No one tells you when to brace. This freedom is unsettling. You try to work. You try to fit into households that expect initiative, confidence, and decisions. You are trained for obedience, not autonomy. You wait for instructions that never come. When mistakes happen, no one corrects you. They simply stop asking you back. Your reputation follows you. Some know you were close to the prince. Others know what that closeness meant. They treat you carefully, like a reminder of something uncomfortable. You learn that proximity to power does not translate into protection once the power moves on. At night, you still listen for footsteps, still count silence, still feel relief when nothing happens. Court habits cling long after court does not. You're 25 when you finally understand your role. You were not a title, an office, nor a rule written down anywhere. You were a solution, a convenient one. You absorbed consequences so a prince could grow without limits. You were a lesson, not a person. History may debate whether boys like you truly existed, whether the practice was formal or exaggerated. You smile at that. You know how it worked. Your body remembers. The prince will be remembered. His tutors will be named. The court will be described in portraits and chronicles. You will not appear anywhere except in habits you cannot unlearn. But you're still here. You survived a system that required your pain and forgot your name. You carry the marks quietly. You live without ceremony, without recognition. And that, you realize, is its own kind of victory.